today we're going to be previewing the new Spore comic book creator. Those of you who have not seen it, I think all of you should have a comic book in your hand. It was made with the Spore comic book creator. Great application that enables you to build your own comic books using pictures and backgrounds and videos. I urge you all to try it out. Please come and visit us at our booth 5367, where you can see both the National Comic Book Creator in action, as well as the live Spore game. I think after today's speech, you're going to want to see that. But now for the reason we're all here for this morning, we're very excited to welcome the father of Spore, and one of the brightest stars in the gaming world today, Mr. Will Wright's first appearance at Comic-Con ever.
Or use some PowerPoint and take this off. Right? Let's see, you see my PowerPoint? So I'm going to talk a little bit just about general stuff and then give a little bit of Spore demo and how much time we have. I'm going to go kind of fast because I can do that. Something that the fans kind of own. You know, I think we're seeing in the gaming industry that more and more players are wanting to own the experience, right? Make user-generated content, etc. And Comic-Con's always been about that. You know, I think half the kind of entertainment coming here is seeing the other fans and how they dress and how they behave and stuff like that. That's at least as entertaining as exhibits. You know, there's kind of this Japanese term called otaku, which is meant kind of derisively, but it means somebody who's just overboard, you know, obsessed. And I think everybody has kind of an inner otaku. It's like one thing to really get into. How do you really obscure that Comic-Con is a collection of otakus, really, if you can kind of celebrate that. For myself, my own otaku is centered around my favorite movie of all time, 2001: A Space Odyssey. You know, one of the things I've always been looking for in the 2001 lenticular posters, you know, and this is like a super rare item that you kind of hear about hush tones between 2001 fans. Actually, last time I was at Comic-Con was a few years ago, and of course, you know, when you come to Comic-Con, you have this thing that you want to get. It's like being a big game hunter, right? You're always kind of stalking down the aisles with this thing, and one day you'll see it. It might be difficult, but you know that you're going to do it eventually with enough persistence. So I was at Comic-Con and browsing the aisles, talking to people, and I came upon this little poster shop and had some sci-fi stuff. This is one of my things on the side of, you know, the big exhibit hall. And I found a nice 2001 poster, of course they had those particular posters, but I got this poster I liked. And so I went up there with this couple old guys kind of wearing their boots, and one of them had to go off to the bathroom. And so I went to the other guy and said, I want to buy this poster. And he said, okay, cool, and I paid for it. And when I was about to walk away, he said, oh, you want me to sign that? And my first thought was, why do I want you to sign it? Turns out, this is very logical. I just didn't recognize it. And then when I realized who it was, of course, I was ballistic. And of course, I can sign it, etc. I grew up in the 60s. It was an interesting time. You know, there was a lot of social strife, you know, what was going on. But at the same time, there was this interesting optimism about the future and where things might go. You know, we were talking about rocket power jetpacks, nuclear cars, you know, space colonies, all these things seem possible. This is right at the height of the American space program. And, you know, as a kid, I would build models of all the spacecraft and follow the space program, you know, on TV, every single launch. And I remember, you know, very well, you know, being 10 years old, watching them land on the moon, you know, on a black and white TV set. So I totally got into that side of what was going on. At the same time, I was consuming all the fiction around this. You know, Star Trek came out around that time, which offered this kind of hopeful view of the future, this very optimistic view. That's also when I saw 2001: Space Odyssey. I was about 7 when it came out. My parents brought me to see it. It totally blew my mind as a kid, you know, in a number of different dimensions. And I realized later how influential it was in my life. You know, first of all, it had aliens. You know, there were very kind of strange aliens in this movie, but the idea that there was other intelligent life off of Earth just totally fascinated me. Equally as fascinating to me was how. The idea that maybe, you know, the first alien intelligence we need was going to be the ones we invent, the AIs and stuff. It was very interesting in 2001 how it was presented. You know, people can saw how, and they didn't know much about computers, and they just took it for granted that Hal could have these natural conversations and could even do things like read lips. But when Hal beat him in chess, they were like, oh, there's no way you can do chess. He's getting that smart. So the idea of intelligent machines is totally kind of reformulated our definition of what it means to be intelligent. And also, at 7 years old when I saw this movie, I didn't realize that adults didn't know everything. And so the predictions of the future that we'd have these giant lunar colonies and we'd be living and working on the moon, when I was about 40, I just kind of took that as a given. Of course, we know what the future is going to be, and that's going to be it. So it was a big surprise to me later in life when that future did not develop, and I realized how kind of chaotic and unpredictable the future was in general. So I kind of always had this fascination with aliens, and one of the reasons is that aliens, I think, represent a lot of aspects of humanity. You can kind of look at aliens, and sometimes they triangulate what it means to be human. We have very benign, nice, well-meaning aliens. We have very mean, dark, foreboding ones. We have very smart ones. So aliens, in some sense, triangulate humanity in an interesting way. And I think robots do the same thing. When we think about robots, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to replicate human abilities in machine. And as we do that, we start realizing how amazing we are. Whenever we try to build a robot, if you try to replicate the behavior of a human hand and the abilities, you realize how wonderful this thing is compared to any machine that we can currently build. And so really, robots teach us a lot about humanity as well. And so I think that for me, that's why I have these kind of two interests, is that really it's a way of understanding ourselves as human beings. That kind of brought me also into a strong interest in modeling. When I got my first computer, as a kid, I spent a lot of time building models of planes and tanks and stuff. When I got my first computer, I started realizing that it was like the ultimate modeling tool. I could build models that weren't just static things sitting on the shelf, but they had dynamic behavior behind them. So as I got into the game industry, I naturally started building models of the real world. This is from SimCity, obviously. And so for me, computer games have always had this kind of interesting, let's understand the world around us by trying to model it. But it's very different than kind of the general impression that our culture has about what computer games are and what they can. A few months ago, I was asked to help curate an interesting exhibit at the Vancouver Art Museum. And it was a cultural exhibit that included things like anime, comics, graphic novels, games, etc. I was one of about 8 curators. I was curating the games in the exhibit. They had other curators that were curating the other things like graphic novels and comics. It was a very big exhibit, very well done, like 20,000 square feet. I had an interview actually with a reporter I know, and she was interviewing some of the curators. And she told me something interesting. She had interviewed a lot of the other curators, and she said, some of the other ones, the ones who do the comic books and stuff, they were really kind of surprised that games were included. They didn't really think games were an art form. And I have to tell you, when you have the comic book people looking down on you, this kind of you're at the bottom of the barrel now. Now, I gotta tell you though, I think if we look at other art forms and kind of, what came after, every single art form, has been looked down on the ones that were above it. Okay, and this is almost a natural result of the way these kind of forms of expression develop. Looking kind of into this, a lot of times when I tell people they make computer games, it's almost an embarrassing admission, and they think of these games as things that corrupt their youth and cause them to get totally fixated and obsessed and won't put those games down, it's horrible. They don't really play games, they don't understand what's going on in the player's imagination, but they know that kids are going to get absorbed into these game worlds and they can't really understand why. There was a really interesting quote I read a while back, and it was describing a guy who walked into a room and he saw another fellow sitting there absorbed in this device he'd never seen before, and he was like so fixated on this thing that he didn't even notice him walk into the room, and he was freaking out. This guy was so absorbed in this, satanic thing that he lost awareness. He was not in the room with me. And it turned out this passage was written in the 1500s. It was the first time I'd seen somebody reading a book. And so I think, the power of the game telling our kids is not really a new thing. And the fact that, the generation above doesn't understand that is not a new thing either. If you look at any form of self-expression that we consider art today, it's gone through tremendous evolution from kind of its origins to kind of how we see it today. And a lot of times these things originate from very different reasons. Writing as a system, alphabets and whatnot, were basically just invented to keep track of grain and stuff, basic bookkeeping. It was only much later that people started doing other things with it. The monks would copy down, holy books in the monasteries, and it was a form of worship. And you weren't even so much reading